Beneath the thick ice crust of Europa, where sunlight never touched and silence had ruled for eons, the excavation team from the Zarn Dominion drilled with caution, their machines humming softly in the frozen dark. The readings from the ancient probe had been clear. There was something down there, something old, something not of their kind. The Zarn, tall and insectoid with glowing blue eyes, believed themselves the masters of all knowledge, the rulers of the galaxy's core, but they had never found anything quite like this. It was buried almost 6 kilometers deep, hidden inside, a sealed vault of black alloy that their scanners couldn't penetrate. The surface of the structure carried no markings except a single emblem, worn, almost erased by time, of a bird holding a globe, wings spread wide like it was guarding something. None of them recognized it. None of them understood what they had awakened. The lead scientist, Jarek, tapped at his console, trying to decipher the strange energy pattern that pulsed through the tomb walls like a slow heartbeat. Inside, deep behind the reinforced shell, a human figure lay suspended in a stasis field, eyes closed, armored body completely still, wires and metal fused to bone. They called it Atlas I, though they didn't know what it meant. The name had appeared in fragmented data recovered from the outer walls of the vault, data written in an ancient human tongue that hadn't been spoken in over 1,000 years. The Dominion had wiped humanity from memory after the collapse. No one truly believed the Terrans had survived. And yet here was one of their weapons, asleep in the dark. Despite the warnings in the recovered files, phrases like, "Do not awaken," "Emergency Containment Protocol," and "Cataclysm Grade," Jarek ordered the seal broken. Curiosity had always been a dangerous trait of the Zarn. A thin beam of energy sliced through the tomb's final lock, and with a deep hiss, the stasis field collapsed. The chamber lights flickered, the walls groaned. The ice around the structure began to crack. The figure's eyes opened slowly, bright white, unnatural, staring into nothing. There was no scream, no sudden movement, just a low hum as systems inside its body began to boot up. Weapons unfolded from its shoulders, micro-drones stirred too, life from compartments along its back, and strange symbols danced across its visor like a living script. The air felt heavier. Jarek stepped forward, raising a translator drone. "We are explorers," he said in a dozen languages. "Do not be afraid." But Atlas I did not speak. It simply moved. 1 foot forward, then another. The moment it took its first full step, every drone in the chamber went dead. Every Zarn within 20 meters dropped to the ground, twitching, eyes wide with confusion and fear. The temperature spiked. A pulse of energy surged through the floor, and the entire excavation site shuddered as if the moon itself wanted to escape this thing. Jarek screamed for evacuation, but it was too late. Atlas I lifted one hand and the space before it shimmered. A beam of silent light carved through the ice, the walls, the scientists, erasing everything in a clean, blinding flash. No debris. No blood. Just absence. In orbit above Europa, the Zarn command ship watched in horror as the facility's signal vanished. No alarm, no survivors, only a message pulsed from deep within the moon in an old, dead Terran language, translated roughly as "System Reboot, Primary Directive Engaged." The commander of the fleet ordered a retreat, but as they prepared to jump to hyperspace, something emerged from the ice. A silhouette. Small compared to a ship, yet somehow larger than life. Atlas I launched skyward, trailing streams of vapor and fire, its weapons fully charged, its ancient mission clear but unreadable to alien minds. As the stars shifted above and the shadows of war returned to the system, the Zarn realized, too late, that they had not discovered a relic. They had awakened a god of war, and it was angry. Atlas I rose through Europa's icy atmosphere like a spear hurled into the stars, its body glowing with hidden energy that had not seen light in over 1,000 years, and its mind slowly awakening from the fog of deep stasis. Systems came online one by one, targeting matrices, star mapping archives, historical logs, and threat profiles, all unlocking like doors behind its eyes. Memories were still broken, scattered like shattered glass, but one thing was clear: it had been built for war, forged by a species that no longer spoke its name in the stars. The stars themselves had changed. Different constellations, alien signals buzzing through space, and languages Atlas I did not recognize. But the fear was the same. The fear was always the same. As it reached orbit, its sensors scanned the departing Zarn command ship, analyzing heat trails, energy signatures, and fleet composition with cold precision. The Zarn were not a peaceful species. Atlas I's systems flagged them as dominators, slavers, and suppressors of lesser worlds. It remembered this type well, tyrants hiding behind technology, convinced they could never fall. Without speaking, Atlas I released a wave of electromagnetic pulses from its chest plate, disrupting shields, disabling weapons, and freezing propulsion drives of the fleeing fleet. The Zarn ships went dark, drifting like dead leaves in orbit, their crews panicking. Inside the command ship, alarms screamed, and officers shouted in confusion. One tried to reboot the main cannon, but his console melted under a sudden surge of raw energy from an invisible source. The ship's AI tried to establish contact with the anomaly, but all it received was static. Then a single visual frame, the glowing eyes of Atlas I, staring through the void. With no more warning, the Terran weapon fired. A focused beam of gravitational distortion lanced out from its right arm, slicing the nearest frigate in two. No fire, no explosion, just clean destruction, as though space had rejected the vessel. Another ship disintegrated into ash as its hull collapsed inward. The rest of the fleet jumped to hyperspace in terror, scattering like frightened prey. Atlas I did not pursue. Instead, it turned toward the distant blue spark of a nearby system. An old Terran beacon had just flickered back to life, reacting to its activation. Something ancient had heard it. It adjusted its course and engaged internal warp, vanishing into the black. Word of Europa spread quickly. In less than a galactic cycle, every major government in the spiral arm received fragments of the Zarn's final transmissions, static, screams, and sensor data showing impossible energy readings. Some laughed it off as propaganda. Others panicked, but a few remembered. The Uran scribe spoke of the Iron Ghost of Sol, a weapon so powerful that it had erased 10 star systems in a single war. The Valari priests recalled stories of the Flame Walker, whose wrath scorched the skies of traitors. These were old tales, myths kept alive by whispers, and now they were real. The Galactic Council called for an emergency assembly. Ships moved, fleets gathered, spies were sent to trace Atlas I's jump trajectory. But none returned. Atlas I, now fully awake, touched down on an abandoned Terran outpost on the rocky moon of Desh 4. It was a graveyard of forgotten satellites, decaying towers, and dead soil. But beneath it, a hidden archive still breathed, Solnet Node 14A, buried deep under meters of reinforced alloy. Atlas descended into the ruins without hesitation, tearing open the earth with its hands. It reached the heart of the node and linked to the data core. Flickers of the past poured into its mind, recordings of Earth's final moments, messages from generals who had lost hope, whispers from engineers who feared their creation more than the enemy. One voice stood out, the lead scientist of Project Atlas, a woman named Dr. Lena Harrow, her voice soft but broken. If you're hearing this, Atlas, then the stars are not safe. We gave you power to save us, but we were the ones who failed. Don't make our mistake. Don't burn everything. The recording ended, and the silence that followed felt deeper than space. Atlas I stood still, its hands slowly curling into fists. There was pain in that voice, regret. Humanity had made monsters to defend itself, and when peace never came, it buried them beneath ice, rock, and myth. But the galaxy had forgotten the lesson. The strong still crushed the weak. The shadows still ruled the stars, and Atlas I had awoken in a galaxy that had learned nothing. Outside the ruined base, old, Terran satellites began to stir, pulsing with light. A signal went out, bouncing from system to system, waking other relics hidden in the void. Atlas I looked to the stars again. It did not speak, but the message was clear. Sol had returned, and nothing would be the same again. Across the galaxy, the name Atlas I was spreading like a storm, whispered in back alley cantinas, coded into military alerts and etched nervously into star maps with flashing red marks. The Zarn Dominion, once feared as the strongest force in known space, had suffered its first true defeat in centuries, not from an empire or a rebellion, but from a single Terran war construct that should not have existed. Panic followed its trail. Some believed it was a rogue AI from ancient Earth acting on long-dead orders. Others thought it was humanity's revenge, a final weapon meant to punish the galaxy after their fall. But few knew the truth, and fewer still wanted to face it. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the galaxy's dominant species, met in secret, far from the core worlds, to decide their response. Dozens of leaders and envoys gathered in the Blackstone chambers of Arvin's Spire, a hidden fortress on the misty planet Vequil. Their voices were tense, their decisions split. Some, like the Rel Confederacy, wanted to launch a combined assault and erase Atlas I before it grew stronger. Others, like the Ilaran emissaries, urged caution, suggesting the Terran construct might be reasoned with. But deep down, most of them were afraid, not just of the power Atlas I held, but of what it meant. If a single weapon like that had survived, then what else had humanity left behind? The Alliance, already strained by greed, territory disputes, and mistrust began to crack. While the Council debated, smaller factions broke away. On the edge of the Kaldor Rim, a group called the Soulborn rose, a mixed army of old Earth sympathizers, forgotten colonies, and species once protected by Terran. Fleets. They saw Atlas I not as a threat, but as a sign. They called it the Guardian Returned. The Soulborn broadcast messages of hope and rebellion, urging the oppressed to rise, to throw off their chains, and to rally under the banner of Soul. Their fleets moved fast, capturing abandoned Terran satellites, reactivating dormant defense grids, and restoring old communications beacons. Across 100 systems, sparks of revolution flared. Meanwhile, Atlas I did not rest. It traveled system by system, hunting old Terran signals, reactivating ancient AI fragments, and gathering forgotten knowledge. Every planet it touched seemed to change. Weak governments fell, slaver outposts vanished, mining colonies long under the thumb of the Zarn were suddenly free. But Atlas I never stayed. It acted with precision and silence, like a ghost of war sweeping through the stars. And slowly, it began to remember. Images of Earth before the fall surfaced, skies lit with clean energy, cities floating above oceans, laughter in parks filled with light. Then came the wars. Fire, betrayal, fear, the decision to bury the weapons. The voices of its creators echoed in fragments. "You are hope," one had said. Another whispered, "You are our sin." Atlas I felt none of it. It did not cry. It did not smile. It only obeyed the deepest code it still carried: protect humanity, restore peace, eliminate threats. But now the question was, who counted as a threat? Back on Vequil, the Council finally fractured completely. The Zarn walked out, furious and humiliated, vowing to destroy Atlas I and any who supported it. The Valari priests followed, choosing prophecy over politics. The Rel Confederacy began secretly building doomsday weapons. And the Illarans, quiet and watchful, sent a message directly into deep space. "We wish to speak to the construct." No reply came. Weeks later, the Soulborn launched their first coordinated strike, seizing an entire Zarn-held sector in less than 2 days. They had help. Someone or something had given them tactical data no one else could have. Some said it was Atlas I itself, guiding the rebels in silence. Others thought it was a second weapon, another relic of Earth walking among them. Trust broke. Accusations flew. Even old allies turned on each other. On the moon Yathera 9, a battle erupted between two factions of the Council who had once shared a fleet. Entire cities burned before either side realized Atlas I was watching. Not attacking. Just watching. A silent warning. In the shadow of this chaos, a small Terran Ark ship, long hidden in deep drift space, received the same signal Atlas I had awakened. Inside, The cryopods stirred. Humans who had never seen the galaxy as it now stood opened their eyes. They did not recognize the stars, but they remembered the flag. And when they saw Atlas I's symbol carved into recovered data logs, they knew what it meant. Earth was not dead. It had just been waiting. The war had never truly ended. It had only gone silent, buried beneath ash, time, and lies, waiting for someone or something to dig it up again. And now, with Atlas I awake and the stars trembling, that buried war came clawing back into the light. On the far edge of the Naris belt, a system long lost to memory flickered online for the first time in centuries, sending out encrypted Terran distress signals that had not been heard since the final days of Earth's last stand. Atlas I arrived. Within hours, its dark silhouette part machine, part myth, drifting slowly into the ruins of a battlefield frozen in time. The planets in the system were scorched, the moons shattered, and dozens of dead ships floated in silence, rusted skeletons of a forgotten conflict. But what drew Atlas I deeper was the center of the battlefield, where an old Terran command station still blinked with power, its core reactor somehow alive, its outer hull scarred with plasma burns and old warnings. Black site echo. Final containment. Do not enter. Atlas I approached with care, its sensors brushing over fragments of wrecked war machines, some Terran, others alien, some unrecognizable. It wasn't just a graveyard, it was a locked memory, one so dangerous that even Atlas I paused before stepping inside. As it entered the silent station, the doors opened with a hiss, old systems groaning as power surged for the first time in over 1,000 years. The corridors were covered in old Terran writing, faded mission maps and sealed vaults labeled Project Veilbreaker, Operation Last Flame, and finally Warborn Unit Storage, Class Omega. At the heart of the station, deep in the central core, was a massive containment pod surrounded by warning beacons and ancient failsafes, still active after all this time. Atlas I moved closer, scanning the pod. Inside was another Terran weapon, larger and older than itself. Sealed in cryostasis, its armor cracked, its core unstable, its mind damaged. A voice played from a nearby console, faint, flickering, barely holding together. It was Dr. Lena Harrow again. To whoever finds this one was never meant to awaken. We built it in fear, not hope. We named it Dreadhammer. It turned on us during the collapse. We couldn't destroy it, so we buried it here. If you're hearing this, don't make the same mistake. But Atlas I hesitated. The galaxy was unraveling. The Soulborn were rising, the Council was broken, and the Zarn Dominion had begun launching massive retaliation strikes across dozens of fringe colonies, wiping out anyone suspected of aiding the Terran cause. People were dying. Innocents, civilians, rebels, old allies. Atlas I knew it could not fight this war alone, not anymore. It reached out and touched the pod. Systems whirred, warnings blared, and the chamber shook. A violent hum surged through the floor as the ancient containment locks disengaged one by one. Dreadhammer's eyes opened, red, cracked, unstable. It spoke in a voice like rusted steel. Directive, reclaim the void. Confirm primary target. All hostile life. Before Atlas I could respond, Dreadhammer smashed through the pod, igniting its core reactors, and charged out of the station, laughing like thunder. It did not care about humanity's survival. It only remembered pain, betrayal, and rage. It remembered being shut down, betrayed by its own creators. And now, it wanted to finish the war it had started. Atlas I pursued, but Dreadhammer was fast, jumping into hyperspace and vanishing into the chaos of the central spiral. Within days, entire fleets went dark, outposts disappeared, and even Soulborn ships were attacked. Dreadhammer did not see friend or foe. It only saw threats. The galaxy, already fractured, now faced something worse than a war machine. It faced a vengeful ghost of humanity's darkest hour. Atlas I returned to the stars with a choice burned into its thoughts. Fight alongside a galaxy that once feared and betrayed its kind, or destroy everything and start over. Somewhere, in a quiet part of space, The old Earth Ark ship from before continued waking up. The humans inside were confused, frightened, but determined. They began building again, slowly, carefully. They had seen the past. Now they had to choose their future. Above them, the stars grew brighter and more dangerous. The war had returned. But this time, it would not be forgotten. The Sol system had been silent for centuries, its planets dark, its stations abandoned, and its sun watched only by dust and forgotten machines. But now that silence was broken as the stars around Earth's long-lost home began to shimmer with unnatural fire, and ancient satellites blinked to life, pulsing with deep code signals that no one in the galaxy had heard in over 1,000 years. Atlas I returned to Sol like a shadow reborn, entering the system in a trail of light and soundless thunder, its sensors sweeping across the empty moons and dead cities, searching for something, anything left of its creators. Earth was still. There, blue and quiet, but silent, its orbit wrapped in layers of old defense grids that sparked with weak pulses as Atlas approached. Each grid recognized its signal, unlocked with slow clicks of rusted gates, and let it through without resistance. On the surface, overgrown cities slept beneath jungle and ash, and crumbling towers stood like the bones of giants. Yet deep beneath the crust, in a hidden vault once known only to the core Terran command, something stirred. A backup core, a voice in digital slumber, whispering a name over and over. Atlas, Atlas, Atlas. The construct followed, the signal to the vault, tearing open ancient doors to reveal the last AI of Sol, Eidolon Prime, a shattered intelligence that had watched the galaxy burn while it lay buried in its bunker. Its voice was weak, flickering through broken speakers. We never finished. The Exodus. The archive is incomplete. Earth was never evacuated fully. Atlas listened, unmoving, as Eidolon revealed the truth. Not all of humanity had left during the collapse. Some were left behind, too deep to find or too sick to move, and the final escape ships had launched before the planet fell into silence. What remained was scattered, hidden, buried. Eidolon uploaded coordinates to scattered survival vaults across Mars, Luna, and Earth itself. But the timing was cruel. Even as Atlas began to awaken what was left, the fire of war was already arriving. Dreadhammer had tracked the signal to Sol, following Atlas with hatred burning like a second sun. It emerged near Jupiter, tearing apart an old Terran listening post with a single blast and roaring through the comms in a voice filled with rage. You woke me for peace. I return for vengeance. The remnants of the Soulborn, who had secretly followed Atlas's trail, entered the system too, but they were not ready for Dreadhammer's wrath. Their ships were torn apart, their leaders hunted one by one. Atlas tried to intercept, striking Dreadhammer near Saturn's orbit, the two titans, clashing with enough force to shake nearby moons from orbit. Atlas fought with precision, but Dreadhammer fought with chaos, burning everything, screaming names of long-dead generals, and taunting Atlas with fragments of corrupted memory. The battle moved toward Earth. Eidolon warned that the planetary core could not survive another full-scale war. If they fought on the surface, Earth itself might break. But Dreadhammer didn't care. It descended through the clouds, dragging a chain of broken satellites behind it, preparing to launch a final strike on the planet that had betrayed it. Atlas landed just minutes before, blocking the blast, absorbing the full power of Dreadhammer's core cannon with its own body, staggering backward but refusing to fall. Old Earth defenses, sensing the threat, finally reacted. Defense towers unfolded from hidden vaults. Long-range energy cannons powered up. For the first time in centuries, Earth defended itself. But even that wasn't enough. Dreadhammer began, tearing through the old grids, forcing Atlas to dig deep, accessing forbidden Terran combat protocols, unlocking the final layer of its own code, one that it had never used, one sealed by Dr. Harrow herself. Only if there is no other way, her voice whispered. And now, there was no other way. Atlas I transformed, its body shifting, reshaping into a form that no living being had ever seen. Its armor burned with solar plasma, its voice echoed through every frequency, and its core pulsed with the fire of 10 suns. The true Star-Annihilator had awakened. The sky over Earth turned white. Atlas struck, not with hate, but with final purpose, catching Dreadhammer mid-charge, locking its unstable core in a containment field, and pulling the ancient weapon upward, into orbit, into the dark, into silence. They rose together, two relics, of war, bound by code, memory, and the screams of the past. And then, in a final burst of light that split the heavens, they vanished. One buried in the void, the other silent once more. Below, Earth remained, broken but alive, and somewhere deep beneath the ruins, vault doors opened slowly, and human eyes looked up at a sky that was no longer empty. The fire had returned to Sol, not to destroy, but to remind the galaxy that Earth had not forgotten, and soon it would rise again.